Should local jurisdictions ban the sale of commercially bred animals? Sarasota County isn't alone in its decision. Palm Beach County enacted its own ordinance in September. 48 Florida cities have the same rule as well. While Sarasota only has 2 pet retailers impacted, it essentially prevents any new retailers from coming into the area. Revisions were later made to the ordinance to allow for hobby breeders to continue selling pets from their homes. There are also exceptions allowing occasional sales from groomers and boarding kennels and vets' offices. Joining us for more on the ordinance is Mark SHAMBOUR, a canine good citizen evaluator for Canine KORRAL, and attorney Morgan Bentley. And we also want to know, we did ask the Petland Corporation to join us tonight, and they didn't. You know, when you hear the interviews with the owners of Petland in Ray's story, it's heartbreaking from their perspective because this is their livelihood, and the essential point that they're making is, isn't it possible that some of the companies or breeders that they get their animals from do a good job?
It is possible. I'm the type of person that if I were going to purchase a dog, which I've never done, I would want to pick up the phone and be able to call the breeder, and I think that that breeder should know about that dog personally. And if they don't, and I'm not able to visit, I think that there's probably something going on that I should know about and they're not telling.
You were telling me before the show the whole idea of pet stores really goes back to the 1950s. If you could explain briefly.
After World War II, the USDA was encouraging farmers to make a little bit more money by actually using pets, breeding pets, dogs specifically, for a cash crop. And then, of course, in 1952, you had that song that came out, How Much Is the Doggy in the Window? And that was all spurred on selling pets. And, you know, back then, I think that maybe things were a little bit done a little bit more up and up, but I think that just like with anything else, the commercial aspect came about. And I think, you know, from what I've seen televised and the puppy mill situations, I do truly believe that it's gotten to a point where we really need to take check.
Morgan, you see both sides of this issue, because on one hand you are associated with groups who are in favor of the ordinance, but there are, as Ray pointed out in his story, some constitutional issues here.
There are, and you know, I do represent Sarasota Defensive Animals. That said, you know, I know Rob Robinson, who was in your piece earlier, and Tom Schultz, and I've met the Parkers on a number of occasions. They're fine people. That said, whenever you have an issue like this, where you're taking away a portion of the market, you're going to have a constitutional challenge. I mean, that's just the way it is. When it was, you know, you may remember we used to have a mullet shop on Siesta Key. There was a gas station at the end of McClellan Park. Anytime you're dealing with removing something that was otherwise in the market legally, you're going to get a constitutional challenge, and that's really the argument that they're making. They're also making the argument that that there should be some kind of stay put in place, because, you know, really the effect of it is inordinate on them in their view, and so that it should just be stayed until the whole thing is heard. You know, there's some counter arguments to that we may get into in a little bit.
But has this been litigated in any way? I mean, we pointed out that 48 Florida cities have a similar ordinance. So
it's been litigated to death, actually. So actually, it's not just Florida; it's all over the country. We're actually getting to a point now where there is some clarity to it. So early on in Arizona, in Chicago, out in California, up in New Jersey, in Sunrise, in Florida, there were a number of Florida cases, federal and state. Constitutional, non-constitutional, all these issues were raised in various forms, and we eventually started to sort it out, and now we're at a point where we kind of know what the ordinance looks like. We kind of know what it's supposed to do to be upheld. This one meets all those tests. It has some issues about hobby breeders, some exemptions that are a little unique, but otherwise this ordinance has been upheld.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. When you're dealing with hobby breeders and the other ways of getting animals, what are the quality controls that are in place in those cases? Well,
there's local ordinances for the local breeders, and I have breeders that shop at my store. And one of the reasons I know that they're good breeders is based on what they tell me, how they qualify, and they buy very good food for their dogs, and they take a very passion in what they do. They want to know where their dog is going. They want to qualify the people that are going to take these puppies and buy these puppies from them. They're very passionate, and just like the people with the activists and the people that are against the sale of pets, you know, for me, it's the bottom line is how are the pets treated? How are the mothers of all these puppies treated? It all comes to me, it all comes down to the dog.
Okay, there is so much more to discuss on this topic, but let's take a quick break. And when we return, we'll let you know if the fog that we have been seeing will continue in our weather forecast, so stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, the deadline for pet retailers in Sarasota County to stop selling commercially bred pets is set for January, but could a lawsuit to help save businesses such as Petland? Our guests tonight are Mark SHAMBOUR of KANINE KORRAL and attorney Morgan Bentley. It's a tough subject, Mark, because a lot of people who may be in the market for a new pet this time of year, you know, the idyllic vision is of a puppy coming into the house. A lot of us would say, you know, the good thing to do would be to go to the shelter, but puppies are not always available there.
That's right. First of all, it's not a good time to get a puppy this time of year around Christmas.
Why?
Because people give them as presents, they're not prepared to have the dog, and then in February they're coming to me to have them trained because they turned into these 12-week monsters. So I usually say that this is not really a good time to pick a puppy. However, talking about the shelter, you know, my dogs have all been shelter dogs, or I've got my dogs from somebody that might have passed away, and you know, we have the power of the internet. I don't go on it a whole lot, but I know that people Google everything. And if you are in a position where you would like a specific breed, there are breed rescues out there. And not every rescue has issues. I think that, you know, I'm seeing a lot of issues with the dogs that are sold at pet stores. But not every rescue has a problem, a behavior problem, but it's a good excuse for a pet owner to say, oh, he's a rescue, rather than deal with the problem.
So, Morgan, you have situations like the Petland Sarasota where those owners basically showed you the video of where they purchased some of their dogs, and it seems like a good place. You've seen the horror stories that have been, you know, out there for years, and you know, I mean, what do you do? Because, you know, those stories about the bad puppy mills are not now done all the time. It's not, you know, something that people always think about and access.
Right, that's true, and I want to emphasize, you know, I'm sympathetic to the Parkers, but as in the bigger picture, when you say horrible, the puppy mill stories are horrible. They're not just bad; they're horrible. Yeah. There are stories of there was a mill in Ohio where the amount of they had a burial spot for the dogs that died in the puppy mill, and it was in the thousands of pounds per month of dead puppies. Now imagine how many puppies it takes to get to 2,000 pounds of dead dog per month. So I want to emphasize this was not something that it was, you know, it wasn't a not well thought out issue. But having said that, to answer your question, there are a lot of ways, and picking up on what Mark just said, one of the unique things about our ordinance here that I give the Commission credit for, Paul Caragiulo and Charlie Hines in particular were very focused on, let the market control this a little bit, because what happens with puppy mills is you don't see the puppy mill, you just see the puppy. So, you know, you don't get that connection, whereas with hobby breeders, which is what they built into this ordinance, the key is the buyer has to see where the puppy is bred, and the idea is if someone walks in and sees a bad situation, that kennel is not going to be there very long.
Well, let's dive into that.
Yep.
Specifically, saying again that I really wish that Petland could have provided a representative to be on this broadcast tonight. I know the Parkers were out of town, and they made their case at the commission meeting, and they are sincere in terms of what they say. But Mark, when you do plan to buy or purchase or get a puppy or a cat, what should a family be looking for?
Well, first of all, the energy level of the dog versus the energy level of the family. I would not recommend a senior citizen to get a puppy. I would recommend a senior citizen to get a dog that's a little bit older. But if they did get a puppy, one that they know when it's mature is going to be at an energy level of their household. The problem is people get dogs and it's a novelty for them, and then the novelty wears off, and then we have the issues with the training. They get sent back to the shelter, or they get been sent back to a shelter no matter where they come from. The thing with me is that I will train any dog no matter where it came from. And I've seen a lot of different things with store-bought and not store-bought.
And aside from the issues that Morgan was talking about, what do you think are the underlying issues involving what are called puppy mills in terms of the length of time the animal is with its mother and the ramifications on behavior
Well,
afterwards?
what I see is, first of all, I don't know when they're taken, but they're taken at a very young age. The mother does not have that time to give the puppy that adult correction that it needs. It's not able to socialize with its litter mates. So you have a dog that's either under-socialized, exhibiting a lot of fear, or sometimes the fear turns into aggression. I've had a couple dogs. I have a puppy right now that can't come to my facility because it's having digestive issues, and it was a dog that was aggressively attacking my house dogs that live there. It's a puppy, you know, and that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen everywhere else. The thing is that these dogs are overbred. The mothers are there, they never see the light of day. These dogs come in with health issues. I've had dogs from a pet store that have died from renal failure. So you really have to size up the family with the dog.
Morgan, let me ask you this. You know, you're saying that the industry, in terms of pet retailers, has evolved. Obviously, you know, some companies like Petco do not sell puppies like this anymore. Is it your hope that corporations, not the retailers or the franchisees, but the corporations change their business model and be a competitor to Petco, which sells food and supplies and so forth?
Yeah, exactly, and that really is the bigger model. I mean, you look at the industry, and that's the way it's going. It's almost as if they're two different industries that are still coexisting. Is the PetSmart, Petco, you know, that's one model, and then you have sort of breeders. And to pick up on what Mark was saying about the internet, your viewers are probably right now Googling, you know, Cavalier King Charles Spaniel rescues. It is astounding how specific these rescues are. And they collect dogs from all over the state that are in rescues at a particular breed. So it's no longer the thing where if you want a particular dog, you have to go to a pet store to get it. It's just not the case. And even if you want a locally bred dog, you can find it. Now, it may not be in Sarasota, it might be in Bradenton, but there are dozens of them out there. And they're all well maintained, and you can go see the dogs before they're, you know, while the mother is pregnant and even after they're born, and the whole works. So there's really no need for puppy mills anymore. I mean, it's just not, it's an anachronism that doesn't, it's sort of outlived its usefulness.
But obviously this is a business that family, that couple is depending upon, and the corporation is still out there, and obviously, despite the fact that some states and some cities are outlawing it, you know, it's a corporation that's still making money.
You know, I was growing up, raised in Minnesota, where you had the family farm. And right now, if you go there, you have very small family farms there. The commercial farms have taken over, and they've gotten into big production. So I think what happens is that if it's commercial, you have less ability to control what's going on.
We have to take a quick break, but when we return, we will have final thoughts from our guests, so stay with us. Welcome back. You are unlikely to find someone who supports puppy mills or kitten factories, but should local businesses be forced to close as a consequence of a crusade against commercial breeders? Our guests join us now for final thoughts. What's the answer, yes or no?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Unfortunately, that's what it's come to, and it's for your viewers who remember the net ban that went into effect years ago. It's the same kind of thing. You know, so many attempts to regulate, so many attempts to avoid this, so many attempts to kind of everyone to meet in the middle, but it never happened from the industry side. Not the Parkers. I mean, they're nice folks, but the big corporations, the national corporations that are puppy mills, because the Petland is not a puppy mill; it's a retail store. But the puppy mills resisted and resisted and resisted, and so you just get to this polarization point where. You know, you have to do what you have to do, and that's what happened with the net ban, and that's what happened with puppy mills.
Mark,
the same thing.
Are you aware of any efforts among the puppy mills, for the lack of a better term, to organize and put in standards that would have avoided this from happening?
I don't. The thing is that the only way that this is going to get fixed is that the legislation has to monitor these commercial breeding houses. You know, I touched on it before, you know, 50s was a great time, but we smoked. We ate fast food. We learned from that. I think what we need to know, is this something that developed back then? I think we need to learn from the mistakes that we as a people have made. And I think we need to monitor the problem, and the problem is the raising of these puppies.
And Morgan, we only have a couple of seconds left, but you also have to keep an eye on, as we discussed, the smaller breeders that you know, breed dogs and sell them locally.
Yeah, and that's the tough one. And again, the commission did a great job of trying to accommodate that, and they did that by doing this sort of face-to-face buyer-to-seller exception for hobby breeders. And I'm real curious to see how that works, because that is a market-driven result or method that, if it works here, that could work all over the country, and that would be really interesting to have that. Sarasota County is the first county in Florida to adopt a puppy mill ordinance. So.
Okay. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Mark SHAMBOUR is a canine good citizen evaluator for Canine KORRAL, and Morgan Bentley is an attorney here in Sarasota with Bentley and Bruning, PA.